Hi there, my name is Andrew Johnson. I'm a software engineer with Fluree working with the Trusted Learner Network. And if you're watching this video today, it's likely that you've already seen some capability around our issuance of credentials to learners across the various institutions that participate with the Trusted Learner Network. Today we're going to speak more about our support and the capability we've built for onboarding new institutions to allow them to continue to manage their data as an enterprise operational system of record, but to still expose that data to students so that as institutions join and add credential data for students, those students can take advantage of that data and continue to add and grow the wallet storage of data of credentials that they've earned through the TLN through each of their institutions. What I just want to get started with on the Credential Issuance app, which I'm going to skip through a bit, again, because I assume that the audience here has already seen that, is that when we have a student who comes to attempt to gain credentials from the TLN, one of the things that they see is a list of all the institutions participating that they may or may not have synced their identity with. When we start this demonstration, I want to point out that there's 3 institutions right now that are part of credential issuance for the TLN: Alpha University, Beta Community College, and Gamma Tech University. Those institutions are represented by a list, a registry of issuers, where we not only are managing that registry when new institutions come on board, we're also evaluating that registry to make sure that those nodes are available, that they're online, that they're healthy, that they're compliant. And when I say compliant, what I mean is that they have effectively secured their data. So although there's a public URL for the data to be accessed from using the semantic queries that can federate across multiple data sets, that URL is secure. It has access policy across it so that data isn't exposed to data leakage, and that it only guarantees access for learners and for the TLN machine service. If we look at the registry of issuers as we start, we'll see the 3 universities, or the three higher ed institutions that we've already identified that came up in that list. We see that their healthiness is all true, whereas this arbitrary school that exists on the registry, Andrew's Very Good School, is false. That's because that node is either unavailable or it doesn't have the access policy in place to guarantee that the data is secure and accessible by the learners who are looking to get credentials from that institution. We'll be walking through today as an institution who chooses to join the TLN, and there's a few ways they can choose to join. They can have the TLN host their own infrastructure and just give them database admin privileges, or they can host the infrastructure on their own, either on premise or on their own cloud infrastructure, etc. They could go about doing that in many ways, but we've tried to help them with what we've understood from input we have from our architectural advisors to be the most common ways that institutions would deploy their own infrastructure. Today we'll look at one of those ways through AWS, Amazon Web Services CDK, or Cloud Deployment Kit. It enables the TLN to effectively hand off some boilerplate to universities. I'll switch over to that code right here. Boilerplate to some universities, and when they deploy that boilerplate, they end up being able to stand up in their own environment with all their own kind of protection variables and private cloud environments, stand up the infrastructure of a TLN node, and begin to add and manage data on their own. I'll go ahead and deploy that right now in front of us so that we can see that happening. In this case, I'm in a random institution. I'm going to call myself Delta Community College, who would like to join the TLN, has found through the documentation this CDK, is deploying it to my own infrastructure, and admittedly this will take about 5 minutes, so I won't wait around to wait for it to complete. Oh, actually, it might take a bit less time. I've already deployed some of this infrastructure myself just for the sake of the demo so that we don't have to wait for it to redeploy. One of the most important outputs that comes out of this is the URL of the particular node that's just been deployed for them through that CDK. If we actually go to that node, which I'll do right now, we'll find that what we have is a graph data platform that's built on immutable ledger technology for all of the security and privacy and data-centric self-defense that we need here. But it allows those users to go in and begin to add data in what we are identifying as some of the most common formats of exporting data from an LMS today. As I go in and show this off, I'm going to use an import utility that is familiar with 2 vocabularies, the Salesforce EDA and PeopleSoft's most common export of data. When I say that we have support for those vocabularies, what I mean is that any arbitrary data could be dropped in as you like it. You can update and manage that data in any arbitrary format, but the TLN has gone ahead and made some semantic maps so that if you are adding your data and managing it in, say, Salesforce, as we're doing right here, we can actually intuit and infer how that data is represented in other vocabularies, such as the open badge vocabulary we use to issue verifiable credentials. When that institution drops in their Salesforce data, we can infer additional facts about that data that allow us to ask questions of it as if it was always open badge data, even as the institutions are managing that data in, say, the vocabulary or subject matter expertise of Salesforce. Now that that infrastructure for the node has been set up, and now that we've gone ahead and added that Salesforce data, really the last thing that remains to be done is to inform the TLN of the actual endpoint where that data is accessible, so the TLN can add them to the registry of issuers and then run the node evaluation service to check for all the things I described earlier: availability, healthiness, and the instantiation of certain data security policies. I should clarify that when these institutions use the CDK to deploy, we do help them out, or we optionally help them out by going ahead and adding that access policy in so that they don't have to worry about that configuration. But all of those options are available to the institution. This is just kind of the getting started, or the getting started quick kind of pathway that we're doing here today. So if I go and copy this particular URL that we just described as the URL behind which that node's available, we can imagine that institution getting back to the TLN and effectively saying, that they've added their node, that it stood up, and that it's ready to be added to the registry of issuers. Oh, oops, my bad. As we go and do that, we basically, the TLN basically is all they're doing is adding an institution. The name of that institution is the name that the institution provided to us, Delta Community College. And we have that, the URL for the institution, which I will just append with one piece of data, which is specifically the name of that ledger that they would also need to provide us. So if this is the ledger that they're managing this data, they would also provide us with that ledger name as well. When we go and issue this particular transaction, there we go, sorry, URI. We issue that particular transaction, we can go back and look at our issuer registry again and see that that institution has been added, Delta Community College, but right now we have no evaluation for whether or not that node is healthy. We have the node evaluation service that we do to check the registry of issuers consistently. Takes place every 30 minutes or so, but we can go ahead and trigger it now to note whether or not that node is available, whether or not that node is healthy at the endpoint that it provided to us. We'll see we get a result back, and if I come back and issue the same query again for our institutions, we'll see that now that institution has been evaluated, it's healthy, and the access policy we are looking for is in place. We can even come back now, and if we come back to our view of this from a learner, we can see a few things. One, when they come and connect to the TLN Credential Issuance Service again, we'll see that that institution shows up as one of the institutions that the learner can now connect to. They haven't yet connected to Delta Community College, so we'll go ahead and connect for them. Whoops, I'm having trouble clicking on this, I apologize. There we go. Once that again, the piece around identity and identity access using the actual SSO platforms for each of the institutions is something that we're working on this current phase. So for now, we just went ahead and made that connection for them, effectively layering on their digital identity to the identity of that institution that institution uses to recognize who that student is. Once that connection is made so that the learner's identity is mapped across all these institutions, we can issue the same query that you've probably seen in the credential issuance demo, which is to say a federated query across all of those data sets, cryptographically made secure by allowing for the wallet of the student to sign that particular query, and the access policy on each of those institutions guarantees that only that particular learner that they understand can see the data that they're looking for. When we go and retrieve all of those credentials, we'll see that in addition to all the other credentials that we've already been able to retrieve from Alpha University or Beta Community College, we also see this credential here from Delta Community College as well, which is part of the data that I added when I used the import tool to add Salesforce data. Although that data was added in Salesforce, it's being returned to us now in an open badge standard, where we can go and proceed to sync that to a learner wallet. And that credential is then made available for that learner wallet in the shape of open badge data, even though the institution is continuing to be able to manage that data on their own enterprise node, manage that data as if it was and always was Salesforce data. There's a lot that I glossed over here. There's a lot more to speak to in terms of the capability around security, around independence of the management of that data, but the federation of that data down to applications like the Credential Issuance app, how that's done safely and securely, how that's done with auditability and proof, the role that the TLN machine service has in being able to access that data, but actually to have less access than the student itself has. There's a lot we'd love to dive into and discuss, including other plans for scaling and supporting institutions as they'd like to join the TLN and manage their own nodes. But if you have any questions about that, we'd love to talk about that further, and we're really excited about the progress we've made here in the ability to add institutions and add institutional data to the TLN, but also in the ability to have that data be valuable to students and applications like the Credential Issuance app.